What's up, bitches? We previously went over pairings for PvP. In that video, I covered pairings for 6v6 and 3v3 settings. If that's some information you're interested in, you can click the top right of your screen and check that video out. If you're not a PvP sweat and looking for some solid pairings for the fighting line in PvE, that's what we're going to be going over in this video. We are going to go over the kinetic slot as well as the heavy slot. I will also mostly be referring to endgame content such as exotic quests, nightfalls, raids, legendary lost sectors, etc. This video is going to be quite a bit longer than my usual videos, so I will throw the timestamps on screen now if you're interested in a certain weapon type. PvE pairings for the fighting lion mostly depend on your type of playstyle when wielding the fighting lion. If you're like me and using the fighting lion as your primary weapon when killing red bards and ads in general, then special kinetic weapons like shotguns, snipers, or even grenade launchers will be the best options. If you like to take full advantage of fighting lion's perk Chimera, primary kinetic weapons might be the best for you. So with that being said, let's jump into it. Double primaries. Pairing a kinetic primary with your fighting line, in my opinion, isn't one of the most viable options for endgame content. The only time I would recommend double primaries is if you're using your primaries for champions, such as Unstoppable Fighting Lion and Anti-Barrier Auto Rifle or something similar. You will most likely be using this in content such as legendary lost sectors that you're trying to solo and you need the anti-champion utility. Outside of this content, you will most likely split your anti-champion utility with your teammates, so double primaries won't be very effective in content such as legend or master nightfalls. Having used double primaries in strikes and other chill content, I tend to lean towards weapons that have auto-loading holster. This is so I can take full advantage of Chimera and not have to worry about reloading my kinetic, unless you're using the Dragon Shadow where dodging will reload all of your weapons. For hand cannons, Criminal's Dagger and Dire Promise both can roll with auto-loading holster. My personal Dire Promise roll when using it with the Fighting Lion would be auto-loading holster and Swashbuckler. For Criminal's Dagger, it would be auto-loading holster and either hipfire grip or explosive payload. Hipfire grip would negate the need to ADS, so I can quickly just clean up without having to try that hard. For auto rifles, the only auto rifle to my knowledge that can roll with auto loading holster is the 7th Seraph Carbine, which is actually a great auto and has the ability to generate Warmind cells, which is great for your Warmind cell builds. My optimal roll for this auto would be auto loading holster in either Vorpal Weapon or Swashbuckler. There are no pulse rifles that can roll with auto loading holster, so really any of your favorite pulses will work well. There is only one scout that can roll with auto loading holster, and that is the Transfiguration from the Last Wish raid. My optimal roll for this scout would be auto-loading holster and opening shot. For SMGs, Cold Front used to be able to roll with auto-loading holster, but I do believe all of those rolls are sunset now. However, Friction Fire is the only other SMG that can roll with auto-loading holster. My optimal roll for Friction Fire would be auto-loading holster in either Sympathetic Arsenal or maybe something like Wellspring or Rampage. There are no sidearms that can roll with auto-loading holster, so if you like using sidearms, just go to town with your favorite one. This also applies to bows. Since bows don't need auto-loading holster, your favorite bow will be perfect. In conclusion, double primaries are viable in legendary lost sectors, but in team play you're most likely going to want to lean more towards special weapons for certain reasons. Also, I did cover roles that have auto-loading holster, but this doesn't mean that other roles can't work just as well. Let's jump into special weapons. Sniper rifles. Sniper rifles are one of the most viable pairings in PvE content. The main reason I tend to lean towards any special kinetic when pairing them with the fighting lion is their ability to take down mini bosses and majors quickly and effectively. Even though there are no kinetic snipers that can roll with auto-loading holster, Succession from the Deep Stone Crypt raid can roll with Reconstruction, which is just as good. This comboed with Vorpal Weapon is one of the best snipers to pair with the fighting lion. However, there is also a couple solid options that we can use as well, such as Eye of Soul with Vorpal Weapon, Long Shadow with Rapid Hit and Triple Tap or Field Prep and Triple Tap, or Praedyth's Revenge with awesome perks such as Rewind Rounds and Feeding Frenzy or Firefly or Frenzy. Snipers in general just have great utility being able to engage at long range or just barrel stuffing ads in close quarters combat. Snipers are definitely one of my go-to options. Grenade launchers. I made a video talking about Ignition Code, which will be linked at the top right of the screen now. We talk about a lot of the roles and uses of the weapon in the current season. Ignition Code has a solid perk set, and I did end up getting close to a god roll with quick launch spike grenades led from Golden Frenzy with a blast radius masterwork. Double grenade launchers in endgame content feels really good this season. Ignition Code has the ability to engage at range or close quarters combat and has the ability to take down clusters of ads at a time. This makes it one of the best weapons in the game to pair with the fighting lion. And Ignition Code with Slide Shot and Frenzy or Slide Shot and Vorpal can also lay down some pretty serious damage, making it a great option for boss DPS. Shotguns. The fighting lion into shotgun is probably one of my most used combos. I pretty much use this for everything that isn't a GM Nightfall, and there are so many great options for the kinetic shotgun slot. Some of my favorites include Heritage with Reconstruction or Autoloading Holster and Recombination, Astral Horizon with Field Prep and 1-2 Punch or Autoloading Holster and Trench Barrel, Reese Walker with Slideways and Vorpal Weapon, or even the Blasphemer with 4th times a Charm and Osmosis or Swashbuckler. The only thing shotguns lack is the ability to engage bosses and majors at range, but comboed with a decent heavy, this can be negated pretty easily. Shotguns also allow one of the quickest and most on-the-fly options in the game for taking down majors, which is why I tend to lean towards them. However, their reserves seem to lack a bit compared to something like the Ignition Code, but the trade-off is higher damage. Fusion Rifles. So that's going to cover the kinetic slot. In my opinion, special weapons are one of the most viable options for any content and should be used most of the time unless you need the anti-champion utility with double primaries. However, this is just my opinion and you should definitely use whatever you have the most fun with. Let's talk heavies. There are so many great heavy options and you can really tailor your loadout with your heavy slot. Rocket launchers. With the sheer burst damage that rockets can currently dish out, rocket launchers are easily an S tier option for your heavy slot for most content. There are also so many great options for rocket launchers, so I will go over, in my opinion, the S tier roles that you should look for. Note that for all rockets, the ideal barrel would be hard launch and the ideal magazine would be impact casing for extra damage. Autoloading holster and lasting impression. This can roll on Tomorrow's Answer, Royal Entry, Code Duello, and the He's in Vengeance. Tracking and Vorpal Weapon. This can roll on Sleepless and He's in Vengeance. I won't get too in depth with the rolls on rocket launchers to keep the time down on this video. However, I will be releasing a separate video dedicated to the best rolls for rocket launchers because there are so many great options. Grenade launchers. Heavy grenade launchers for endgame content aren't the most viable but still are very good. They do have great overall damage and solid DPS. I do tend to pair heavy grenade launchers with the Fighting Lion only if I have a decent special weapon for damage as well. There aren't many cases where I would choose a grenade launcher over a rocket unless I am running a triple grenade launcher build or just having some fun in strikes. Swords. Swords are great for almost any content where you can sword down enemies. Things like dungeons, raids, legend or master nightfalls, or even legendary lost sectors are great for swords. You will want to use swords when you know you won't be punished for getting too close. Swords also have very high damage. Falling Guillotine is still a top tier option, and the reissued class swords are also extremely viable options, and I would highly recommend you giving them a try. Relentless Strikes and Whirlwind Blade is the god roll for the Falling Guillotine, and for other swords, Vorpal Weapon is a great option. Machine guns. Machine guns are one of those niche options because they don't have great damage or DPS, but they are great at one thing really, and that is just shredding ads. Since I use special weapons at my Fighting Lion for ads and majors, I would rather have my heavy slot be reserved for boss damage. If you like to use machine guns, there are some solid rolls I would chase, such as Subsistence and Firefly on the corrective measure, anything with One for All such as the Swarm or corrective measure, or anything with Vorpal weapons such as Avalanche or the 7th Seraph Saw. Linear fusion rifles. Linear fusions recently got a buff, but in my opinion they still aren't super good, but I would recommend the Threaded Needle with Rapid Hit and Vorpal Weapon. To conclude the video, I want to quickly go over some of my most used loadouts in case anyone is wondering what I like to use. Ignition Code, Fighting Lion, and a Rocket Launcher. Heritage, Fighting Lion, and a Rocket Launcher. Succession, Fighting Lion, and a Sword. Astral Horizon, Fighting Lion, and a Rocket Launcher. And Ignition Code, Fighting Lion, and a Sword. Note that for these combos, my weapons, in my opinion, have the best rolls. So that is pretty much going to wrap up the pairings for PvE. If anyone has any questions about any rolls or anything that I didn't cover, always feel free to comment. I will try my best to answer any questions that there might be. Comment with some of your favorite pairings. I'm always looking to try some new things out. Thanks for tuning in.